What is going on, guys? This is Miasin. So YCS Costa Rica and Las Vegas 3v3 tournaments have just concluded, and I really wanted to go over all the most recent meta trends, even though, again, I'm still a little bit sick, so it's really hard for me to just do a lot of research and really give like an insightful, like a deep explanation on all these cards. Even though I was actually at YCS Costa Rica myself, I have quite a lot of things to say about this format because I've playtested like crazy for this event. I wasn't there at Las Vegas, but I will be here. I will be at YCS Sydney in case you guys are going to. That would be nice. But yeah, it's a really interesting format because since it is a tier 0 format, I want to say there's a lot of really interesting cards that you get to play again, and a lot of players had this past weekend were able to actually take advantage of that in order to have an edge over the rest of the competition. Because if you know how to beat the mirror match, you are going to have, like I said, a massive advantage, since if you keep playing mirrors over and over, then the odds of just stopping and winning the whole thing are much higher than, again, the average player. Anyways, before going any further, I would really appreciate you even more if you could smash the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much, you are the best. And now let's get into the first card, which is Lullaby of Obedience. So this card is really interesting because the last time I saw it was in the pure Zodiac format, or rather, just Zodiac format overall. I remember when people were calling Zodiac Rapier and Speedroar Terratop. Now, it's pretty similar, but for Snake Eye Ash and Diabellstar. So I guess in this instance, Snake Eye Ash is the normal summon of choice, so it's pretty much Rapier. And Diabellstar, whether your opponent adds it to your hand or special summons it to your field, it's fine either way. So Diabellstar is basically the new age Speedroar Terratop. It's just another way of getting into your engine. So that's the reason why I want to say this format feels extremely reminiscent to the Zodiac format. You know, everything about the metagame is just about the same. You got a lot of one-card combos, a lot of room for non-engine. The Zodiac deck could also play upwards of 12, 15, 17, 18 handtraps, a ridiculous amount. To the point where there were a lot of anti-Zodiac deck lists. It was kind of crazy. But yeah, now we basically have the same thing, but with Pure Snake Eyes. Pure Snake Eyes is the deck that is being played right now in order to counter the average Fire deck. Because the Fire King Snake Eyes deck is the deck list that people have been just kind of anticipating to be the best deck because of the amount of bricks, quote-unquote, that you have to play. As some people are choosing to go with a minimalistic route that allows you to play as many non-engine as possible while still having the same amount of consistency cards, if not even more. So obviously if you're playing Lullaby of Obedience, then you already have like an extra 3 copies of a card that might get you started or extend your plays even further. So it makes sense why the second place team, Pack, ET-Pat, as well as Hansel, were playing Lullaby of Obedience as a 3-of in their main deck, and obviously it paid off. It's basically just another copy of Bonfire, but honestly much better, because if you are under Droll, you can still use Lullaby of Obedience, and your opponent is forced to special summon the monster that you call to your field. So that's pretty nice. And it's not once per turn, but you do have to pay 2,000 life points. And this card is a little hit or miss, because maybe your opponent might not have the card that you call in his deck, because let's say some people are randomly only playing one Diabellstar, and they drew the 1-of, and then you call Diabellstar, then it might just do nothing. Or maybe you call like a Snake Eye Populist in order to confiscate the 1-of copy from, well, I guess there's 2 copies, but maybe your opponent drew 1, but if you drew 2, then obviously this card does nothing. But for the most part, this card should always do something, unless, of course, you play against a non-Fire deck. But I don't know if you guys saw the graph from day 2 at YCS Las Vegas. 73+% of the field was on Fire King or Snake Eyes Fire King, which is a massive number. It's actually ridiculous, and it's a clear proof that we are in a tier 0 format, so a card like Lullaby of Obedience is definitely justified. But again, this was YCS Las Vegas. The field was different because Las Vegas is, obviously in North America, so people have a little bit more money. They can afford to play the super competitive decks, whereas maybe in like South America or like some other countries, maybe people might play some more rogue decks, some decks that they had for the longest time. So obviously the field is always different, so you can't always take what is valid for one tournament and then apply it for every single other tournament. But yeah, anyways, for Fire King, Kirin, like I said, it's that kind of card that people kind of saw like as an extra copy of Call by the Grave / Cross out to dodge Veiler and Imperm on your Snake Eye Ash. But because of the fact that it doesn't really get anything started on its own, and it's irrelevant when you don't get Veiler or Imperm on your Snake Eye Ash, people are actually choosing to cut Kirin down to 2. And in some extreme cases, maybe down to 1, but you do have to play differently if you only have 1 Kirin Wizard. If you have 2 Kirin, you're basically playing the exact same way as if you have 3. It's just that your grind game is just a little worse. But yeah, 1 Kirin, I think it's a little suicidal, but it definitely can work. So just for a little context, if you're only playing 1 Sanctuary, 1 Island, no Circle, no Skyburn, and 1 Kirin, you're playing 6 Fire King cards, and the amount of pure Snake Eye cards that you would be playing would be the second Flamberge, as well as the Divine Temple, maybe the Jet Synchron, as well as the Birch and the Magician Souls, so that would be 5, which means that you can actually almost turn the Fire King Snake Eyes deck into a pure Snake Eyes deck in terms of the amount of non-engine cards that you play, which is the reason why, even though the Fire King version, it just plays a lot of, like, different cards, right, because it's 2 engines at once, it still manages to be able to play, like, 12 to 15 hand traps, as well as some other utility cards, such as maybe Cosmic Cyclone, Triple Tactic Talents, and in, something that we have seen since YCS Costa Rica and even the UDS was the inclusion of Crossout Designator in the main deck. So it makes sense why you would want to side deck Crossout Designator, because obviously if you're going first, this card is either a Call by the Grave or an actual Floodgate against your opponent. It basically is a D-bearer for one single card that you're declaring, which is kind of ridiculous. It also lingers, so there's really nothing you can do about Crossout. It's kind of scary. So obviously it makes sense why people would want to choose to side deck it, but they're actually main decking this card for the same reason as Lullaby, because they're anticipating the mirror match left and right. So it makes sense that Crossout is not only a card that can shut down hand traps, but also your Snake Eye, the Snake Eye cards and stuff like that. By the way, another thing that I wanted to mention about Lullaby of Obedience is the fact that when you are playing against like something generically, you can also always call like a Ash or Veiler, and your opponent will not really want to give it to your hand, so he'll special summon it to your field, and you can actually use them as tuners with the Diabell Star, either to make Barlow Savage in the case of Veiler, or in the case of Ash, you can make Baron de Fleur. So yeah, there's really just almost no drawback with Lullaby of Obedience if you have done your homework and you know what to call against which kind of deck. Crossout Designator, again, very similar. You also have to call a card, so it really does reward you for being ahead of the curve and really understanding what people are playing and what you usually have to play in your deck in order to just try to beat other decks. So yesterday I made a video saying that Drool is not really a good card, and I stand by that. This card is not really good. I have seen a lot of people play one copy of Drool in their main deck, not because they want to draw Drool as a Saki random one-of against other people, but only because they want to have the option of being able to cross out the Drool in case it happens against them and in case their hand was really weak. Maybe sometimes Bonfire is the only way you get to start playing the game. So again, it makes sense why you would want to be able to cross out the one of Drool, but it's not that great. And people who are playing Drool in their main deck, they're always playing the other 12 hand traps, which are Ash, Veiler, Nibiru, and Imperm. These 12 other hand traps are much, much stronger than Drool, because if you only have one hand trap and your opponent goes Snake Eye Ash, normal summon, then the Drool doesn't really do much of anything, whereas the other hand traps, they can at least be turn-skipping cards to a certain extent. Nibiru, not really, because every one-card combo already plays through Nib. It's kind of ridiculous, but Nibiru played combined with another hand trap is basically always game. Yeah. Now, another card that I think is really interesting would be Ghost Bell. It's actually seeing less play now. I've been seeing a lot of side decks without Ghost Bell, and it makes a lot of sense because what Ghost Bell is good against, I feel like Bestial Monsters are also very good against. So for example, Labyrinth or Silent Forcer or Despia, Ghost Bell is good against all of those decks, right? But Bestials are also decent, because everything that just utilizes the graveyard a lot, it's usually light and dark decks. They're known for, you know, their obsession with the graveyard, so Bestials are obviously going to do something, but Bestials are also very good against the pure Snake Eyes deck, because one of their favorite play is going Flamberge, plays the Masquerena from the graveyard in the Spell and Trap zone, so that they can summon back with the Divine Temple or the Flamberge, and Bestial Monsters would be able to shut down completely. So yeah, we are seeing upwards of 3 to 5 Bestial Monsters in the side deck, with sometimes 0 copies of Ghost Bell, or sometimes we're seeing some players actually go really big and still having 3 Ghost Bell on their side, because again, you can still combine Ghost Bell with Bestial Monsters, no problem. But one thing that I will have to say is that Bestials are not always good against Voiceless Voice, for example. If you banished the Novox, they are still getting the search of Skull Guardian for another low, and then they can normal summon it, and your Bestial Monster just basically did absolutely nothing. So that's a little unfortunate. And against the Gimmick Puppet, the Despia deck, when they're trying to Gimmick Puppet lock you, they could also have the Trabrigade Mercurior in order to negate your Bestial. So that's the reason why we saw Juan Sebastian from the UDS, who got second, side deck 3 copies of Foolish Return. That is a card that can deal with a lot of threats, and it's not negatable by Trabrigade Mercurior. And against the Labyrinth strategy, of course, you're usually trying to banish the Lovely and the Labyrinth Kuklock, but the issue with the Bestials is that you're not negating the Big Welcome. So if your opponent is trying to tutor out like the let's say a different dimension ground, or like any kind of dangerous floodgate with the the lady, then the Bestials, obviously, they're not going to be doing that much. There are still quick effects that you can use to, like, kind of almost, quote-unquote, chain block the lady, but that's pretty much all they do. Now, we are seeing a lot of really dangerous trap cards being played on the side deck. We've been seeing Anti-Spell for the longest time, and we've also been seeing Solemn Strike in the side deck in the OCG deck list, and even Jesse played Solemn Strike in his side deck in the UDS. It makes a lot of sense because Solemn Strike, you can use it to shut down just about anything. The power level of Strike is insane. You can also negate hand traps with this card, so again, it's a great card, but it only stops one play. Anti-Spell can stop anywhere between 0 to 6 cards, so again, very dangerous card, and it's also generic. Summon Limit, it can stop a turn completely on the spot, like regardless of how good your hand is. You can have all the extender in the world, and it's actually going to hurt you even more because you're not going to be able to play the game. And then Different Dimension Ground, it lingers, so you can have the Cosmic Cyclone to deal with it, and it's not going to change anything. So what do you really want to? Do you want the generic ability to shut down spell cards if your opponent has any, and then if your opponent doesn't have any spell cards, then you get punished for that? Do you want a powerful card that you can easily send with your Snake Eyes and is pretty much just like one-sided, very strong card? It might also just lose to like your opponent having like a Cosmic Cyclone. Do you want Solemn Strike, which can negate like hand traps and stuff like that, but again can lose to like Cosmic Cyclone? Or do you want Different Dimension Ground, which, I mean, your opponent can still do some things, but at least you're safe from back row removal. So basically what we're seeing pro players do is that they're all citing 3 Summon Limit when they're going first, and maybe sometimes they also have Crossout Designator, and they could also have Crossout Designator for Cosmic Cyclone as a one-of, so that if their opponent tries to Cosmic your Summon Limit, you can cross out the Cosmic, and you're basically going to protect your Summon Limit, even though your deck cannot make Omni Negates. So it's actually really dangerous to see that people can go upwards of like 9 going first cards and get away with it because their deck, I mean, all the going first cards, quote-unquote, are also playable going second to a certain extent, except obviously for Summon Limit, but Cosmic Cyclone going first or second, it's a great card. Some people have been main decking this card this format, and they're getting great results. And Crossout Designator, again, going first, it's insanely good, and going second, it's less good into boards, obviously, but it can still be used to a certain extent because your opponent will still have, like, a board plus hand traps of his own, so you can at least shut down the hand traps so that you only have to deal with the board. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy said like that, but yeah, Crossout Designator can at least help you out in that regard. And finally, the final cards I really wanted to cover, well, obviously, Triple Tactic Talent, that is another card that I wanted to mention with a Crossout Designator. I think Talent is a really good card. I would want to main deck 3 personally, but some people, they really don't agree with me. They think Talent is a really bad card, and they only want to play 1 for a Crossout target, or even 0. And people are cutting Thrust completely. They're not playing it anymore because people used to do a Different Dimension Ground than Thrust. But in a world where Drill and Logbird exist, Thrust is not that great because if you're going second and you're searching a card like a Talent, you are playing into Droll and then you can't really break the board anymore, so it makes sense why people are cutting the card completely. And also it plays into Anti-Spell even more, so you want to cut the amount of normal spell cards you play from your main deck sometimes, which obviously playing a card like Thrust would not help you out. And yeah, another thing would be Soul Release, so that's a card that I think has been like super popular for the longest time, especially against the, well, Fire King strategy. Against pure Snake Eyes, it's still somewhat decent. You can still manage their Oak and their Princess, so they have a really bad grind game, because a lot of the pure Snake Eyes deck list, they're only playing 1 Princess at the moment. They might adapt and play 2, but if you can banish those cards, then at least you don't really have to deal with like a really nasty follow for next turn. But it doesn't really make them lose that many many interruptions, and they also have Omni Negates to deal with your Soul Release. So it might not be the best way to beat their board. You might as well just rely on hand traps at this point. So I think Soul Release, personally, is just not in a really good position at the moment. It might just not do enough. So I'm actually not a big fan of this card. And another card is Magical Spring, sorry. It's a card with basically almost no drawback because you're just drawing cards and you're discarding cards. And you're forcing interactions from your opponent. So for example, if your opponent has like a Flamberge with like a, Flamberge with like a Masquerena, then when you go Magical Spring, your opponent has to go Flamberge Chain, summon the Masquerena, so that you draw less cards. But, you know, you're still getting some value off of that spring, so that's pretty cool. But you don't really need to play this card. Honestly, it doesn't really change that much to your life. But yeah, overall, I mean, the only cards that you really need, I think, would be Crossout. I think Talent is insane. Lullaby of Obedience is a really cool one if you're playing Fire decks. Do you really want to main deck it? I don't know. I think that was a really ballsy decision from Pac, ETPat, and Hansel. But you could definitely go for it. And then for the Floodgate, I mean, it's really up to you whether you want to go for Anti-Spell, Summon Limit, Solemn Strike, or Different Dimension Ground. Personally, my own opinion is that Semi-Limit is the superior one, but I am open to any argument saying that Anti-Spell might be better, or Strike, or Different Dimension Ground. It really doesn't change that much, honestly. I think regardless of what you choose to go with, it really every one of your decision depends on the other decisions that you're making in your own deck, cohesively speaking. But yeah, that's all I had for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts about these cards in the comment section below. I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.